Hey friends, welcome to Aromatic Chat, the podcast that introduces you to registered, clinical, and certified aromatherapists around the world. Every other week, I sit down with an aromatherapist to learn about their aromatic journey and how they use essential oils in their lives and their businesses. I created this podcast so that everyone can hear from, find, and connect with the aromatherapist that meets their needs. Before we jump in, I want to ask you to leave a review on Apple Podcast. I'll include a link in the show notes. All you have to do is click the link and it'll take you right to the podcast page. Once you're there, click on ratings and reviews and leave that 5-star review. Your words help move Aromatic Chat up in the ratings, making it possible for more people to hear the stories from these amazing humans. Not only that, it just warms my heart to read each and every one that comes in. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching. If you're struggling with overwhelm, feeling like you're being buried alive by your life, reach out to Lemon Balm Coaching, life coaching for the business of life. I'm your host, Melissa, a holistic life coach and registered aromatherapist. Today's episode is a little bit longer than usual, but I don't think you're going to mind. Welcome to episode number 46, Aromatic Chat with Rhiannon Lewis. Rhiannon is one of those people that when you hear her name, you think aromatherapy. Rhiannon is the creator of the International Clinical Aromatherapy Network, also known as ICAN, and has worked in clinical settings for palliative care since she was in her teens. I'm so glad you're here, and I know you'll want to hear her story, so let's get started. What a pleasure to have you here with me tonight. I'm so thankful that you said yes.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And I don't know what time it is in your part of the world.
It is 6 p.m. on the beautiful tropical island of Guam. It's so interesting because I do interview people around the world. So it's like, where's the sweet spot where you're awake and I'm awake and we can make this happen? So
Sure.
I wanted to thank you for your keynote speech at AIA's conference.
Thank you for saying that. I had fun doing it, actually, I have to say. And yeah. I think sometimes when you use analogy, you can help pass messages that would seem a bit dry or confronting at times, perhaps if you were just to say them direct. So this was a way of starting a conference off as well, because it's always a big responsibility when you're giving a keynote session. It's like, that you're setting the scene or setting the theme or, getting people in the motion. So it couldn't just be a straightforward lecture.
I was there as an attendee, and I was also there in my podcast capacity. I interviewed attendees. And one of the questions that I asked was, what's been your favorite thing so far? And so many said the keynote speech. It meant so much to hear, first of all, from you, because you are, aromatherapy. You're, clinical aromatherapy. That's Rhiannon Lewis. Your name was actually just brought up in another podcast episode by Robin Kessler. So many people look to you. And I know that's a huge responsibility, but it's also just it's just a blessing to know that we have people like Rhiannon Lewis and Robert Tisserand around.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm not sure if it's merited, but I think it comes along with the territory of having been around for so long.
Well, that was actually what I was going to say, because you stuck to it.
Yeah.
When I interviewed Marge Clark, it was the same thing. You stuck to it. You didn't give up. You have paved the way for countless aromatherapists who are coming up in the ranks behind you.
Oh, well, thank you for those kind words. Thank you, Melissa. It means a lot to me as well, because, when you give a lecture, you have no idea whether it falls, yes. You have no idea who hears it. Yeah, it's really weird doing things virtually these days. I'm much more of a person. I like to engage with people. And so I found this whole thing challenging with being virtual, because I'm an experienced educator. I love to teach, but I'm used to teaching people, real people who I can see how they're reacting, and I can,
Yes.
we can go with the flow together. Whereas when you're talking into a void,
yes, yes,
it's like, it's been one of my biggest challenges in the last 18 months is getting myself over this hurdle of being able to talk at a computer screen. I've tried all sorts of things. I've stuck photos of students all around the computer screen so that I can look at somebody whilst I'm teaching, but it's still not the same.
Well, Rhiannon, thank you so much for joining me today. You are just an aromatherapist, and I'm so glad that you're here.
Well, I'm delighted that you've invited me, and congratulations for your podcast. I've listened to several of your sessions now. Really, really great.
Thank you so much. And where are you in the world again?
I live in Provence in France. I've been living here in the mountains since 1999.
Wow.
I moved to France in 1997, but I've been here in this area, high up in the mountains, tucked away, since 1999. Yeah, 22 years or something like that.
Beautiful. What is it that took you to France?
I moved to France initially to study the French style of aromatherapy. I'd already been a qualified aromatherapist by that stage. I initially had trained in the UK and already had my practice in the UK. And the opportunity came to move to France to work with an essential oil laboratory. And at the same time as being hired by them to work in their lab, they would train me in the French medical style with the doctors and pharmacists that were part of that company at the time. So that's what, of course, that was the carrot for bringing me to France. That was in 97. And then, once that had come to its normal conclusion, I had fallen in love with France by that time and didn't want to go back to the UK. So that's what led me to put my feet first in France, and then afterwards decide to move to the south, where I'm in full nature with the wild aromatics all around me. Distilleries are close by. I'm not a city girl, so it's important for me to be connected and rooted in nature. And why not in the south of France? Just far enough away to not be into the madness of the Côte d'Azur with everybody going crazy in the summertime. We're tucked up in the mountains, so we have peace and quiet. And we have the best of both worlds with snow in the winter and then lakes to swim in the summer. So yeah.
Yes, why not? Why not France?
Indeed.
Indeed. Yes, that's amazing. So you were already an aromatherapist in 1997, and then the carrot was dangled in front of you and you moved to France. But what is it that made it possible for you to already be an aromatherapist in 1997? Because my mom became a certified aromatherapist back in 1993, and even then it was so fringe. It was just so out there. It didn't make any sense to anyone. Tell us your aromatic journey. How did you end up in 1997 deciding it would make sense to move to France and study aromatherapy deeper?
Well, it's funny, Melissa. People have often asked me this question as to how did you get into aromatherapy? And I wish I could say something impressive, like, I had a dream or something like that. But actually, it snuck up on me. I was nursing at the time. I was in intensive care and had specialized in intensive care by that stage, and came across a book. I'd always been connected with nature. I was born in Africa and grew up in the bush, and it was, I've always had this really strong connection. And here I was in the middle of London, in central London, working in a busy teaching hospital in the intensive care unit. And I came across a very small book, and I've tried to find it since, because it was really what started me off. It was written by Shirley Price. It was almost like a little booklet. It was really small, and it was something like Aromatherapy for Every Day, something like that. And I started using essential oils for myself to help me sleep, to help me cope with the shift changes, night shift, day shift, and help me cope with the general stresses and the tiredness of the intensity of the environment I was working in. And so I was already using essential oils for a couple of years before I started to think, you know what, this could really be useful for patients. And at that time, I then moved out of London. I was in a busy hospital in Surrey. I had realized that I had gone into nursing because I have a very strong life path. My life path is to be next to the person at the bedside. I need to be at the bedside of sick people. That was really my calling, which is what led me into nursing. I didn't think I was smart enough to be a doctor, so I thought I'd be a nurse instead. I then had specialized in intensive care. I was working in this really high-tech environment. I'd gone up in the levels of nursing. And I was getting more and more dissatisfied. And I was struggling with this, thinking, I'm doing the right thing. I'm with the sickest people you could possibly be with. I'm in intensive care. You can't get sicker than that. And yet there's still something missing. Yes, I was good at looking after the machines, the tubes, the medicines, the doctors, the scripts, liaising with the different people who are part of keeping that person alive. But who was looking after the person? And that was my, I guess, if I had an aha moment, that was it. It was then I realized that my goal, yes, was to be at the bedside, but with the person who was suffering, not with their disease, not with saving their lives, but to help them cope with the journey they were going through. And because I'd been using essential oils for myself at that time, I realized that perhaps would be the way to do it, that I should train as an aromatherapist and then take my skills back into the nursing setting and to be with the patient and the person rather than their disease. So that's what I did in 1989. I left nursing and I went and studied holistic aromatherapy in the UK.
So may I ask how old you were at that time?
Yeah, I'm terrible at maths. I'm 58 now. Don't have a problem with age. So that was like 30 something years ago, and I'm 58 now. That makes it, I don't know what, you
20s.
can work out the maths.
Yeah,
must have been late 20s, I guess. Yeah. And so I never looked back, and people thought I was crazy at the time. I was leaving a stable job, a guaranteed salary, and I was, supposed to be going up in the echelons of nursing. And what I realized is that I was being pushed to go up, but that by stepping up, I was getting more and more distant from the patient, because the higher you go in nursing, the greater the distance.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't fitting for me. It wasn't meeting my heart path. And I've been somebody, I guess, over the years who's always tried to follow my heart path. I check in with it regularly to see, am I in the right direction?
That's kind of where I was going with my question about the age, because really, I mean, how many 20-somethings know their path?
It started really early with me. It started when I was at school. I was already visiting when I was in boarding school in the UK, because there was a war going on in Rhodesia, and I wasn't able to go back to my part of the world where I'd been born. And so I was visiting sick people in homes, in nursing homes, and in the little village where I was at boarding school. I was already doing that when I was 16, 17, 18. And it was a no-brainer for me when I left school, was to apply straight to go into nursing. And in between, I spent a very small part. It was about 8 months in total. I went back to Zambia to see my parents, who I hadn't seen in a long time. I went back to them to tell them what my life was, and that I'd successfully got into this nursing school in London. And I worked in a Zambian hospital must have been about 6 months that I was there, but it was in a very distressing environment. It was working with babies who were very, very sick, young babies and young children. So I'd already, before 18, 19, I'd already seen death. I'd already accompanied people in very extreme circumstances. So it was just, I kept being brought back to being with sick people and with suffering people and needing to make a difference. So it's literally been something that's accompanied me through all my life.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And all of the people that I know from Africa are amazing people.
Well, I think you have to be pretty resilient and pretty adaptable, because Africa is an extreme continent, that you can have the best and the worst in the same day. And it is a country where you have to literally live by your I don't know what the word is in English. Sorry, I'm thinking partly in French, but it's, live by your gut. It's a very raw environment. And so you have to be in touch with that earthliness of yourself.
I love that. And that is something that we've lost, especially in American society, is that connection with our intuition, that connection with our gut, the ability to know without a doubt, this is my life path. We've tried to educate it into people, but you can't educate gut. Gut's a connection. So you do mostly education now, correct?
I live in the mountains and I work as an aromatherapist. I've worked as a therapist all through, since I was qualified in 89. But of course, my role as educator has come alongside that and is now probably what I do most, although I still treat people in my local community.
What are some of the ways that you're educating?
Yeah, I think it's part and parcel of being a therapist to start with. You have to wear two hats. You are a practitioner, but education comes into every therapeutic interaction you have with a patient. I have a particular interest in education as well. From my nursing days, I'd already taken courses in how to educate up and coming nurses in the intensive care environment. And I love to communicate. So I think it's, it just came naturally that pretty soon, actually, after I had qualified as an aromatherapist initially, about 2 years later, I started to teach in a local aromatherapy school and then developed that in face-to-face classes with other schools, etc. I think it's important straight off just to say, just on a purely one-to-one basis with the client, you're an educator. But I think it's also relevant to have the skills to educate others who are on that same path as yourself. So, I have educational skills as well. I went back to college and gained what we call in England the City and Guilds certificate for adult education, so that I was equipped with the essential skills to help people on their path. And I've never had my own school of aromatherapy as such. What I've developed over the years is training for people who are already qualified to go that bit further, because there are plenty of aromatherapy schools that teach foundation aromatherapy. I was part of one of them for a long time, which was the school for Gabriel Moje, the ITHMA in the UK. His students would come out here to France, and then I would go to London to teach them the science side of their course. And so I've been very much involved in foundation aromatherapy training, but not having my own school myself. I've been going in as an educator. But what I saw over the time was that once you're qualified, you need to keep going. And I think this is a problem sometimes with schools, is that aromatherapists do that full foundation training, okay, and it's long, it's hard, it's many hours, and they come out with their certificate and they think that that's it. They think that they know everything now, they don't need to go any further. And for me, I've seen how aromatherapy has grown over the years and how it's changed. My main role as an educator over pretty much all of the years, in fact, has been helping people stretch that bit further, take their skills deeper. And so I started off at what we called advanced clinical aromatherapy to try and show people that it was something like another step rather than the foundation. I've tried to be a bit like a bridge between the UK and France, because I have both of these trainings. Okay, so I have the French medical style training and the holistic Anglo-Saxon style training in aromatherapy. I get both perspectives, which can be quite different at times. So I try to be the bridge between them, or the English channel, whichever you want to say, but literally sort of, bring people together, help people who've started out with a foundational holistic training, help them to deepen their skills in a clinical way, learning more chemistry, learning about research, using a more evidence-based approach, perhaps using different dosages of oils or different treatment routes of application, help to sort of deepen them in that direction, whilst retaining their holistic hat. And then the reverse is, because of course I'm living in France,
Right.
is helping people who have trained in the French medical style see that holistic aromatherapy also has a place in France, and trying to make the bridge in the reverse direction, saying, we can use more aroma strategies, we can use more external strategies, we can be more subtle with our approach, we can use lower dilutions. So I'm sort of teaching in both directions, with the idea that if we're going to be really rounded as a practitioner, if we had these different skill sets that we can mix and match according to the patient's needs, then we're using the full potential of aromatherapy. French doctors need to learn more about holistic aromatherapy, and holistic practitioners need to learn more about the more clinical approach. And that's what I've been trying to do since I've lived here in France.
That's beautiful. And that is one of the things that a lot of people have said when your name comes up, is the bridge that you're building and
good.
But people are noticing, and you're trying to bring the communities together instead of keeping everything divided in their nice, neat little boxes. Everyone is seeing it. I want you to know that people are seeing it, that you're working hard to bridge those gaps and bring the community, the aromatherapy community, together. I mean, we're involved in the community, so it feels big. But if you look at the world, aromatherapy is a very small community, and it's divided.
I've always felt that it's better to come together than to stay apart. And maybe it's because I've lived in different countries around the world, and I have a fascination for the differences that we can all bring to the table, and how rich that can be. That importance of community began for me when I had my aha moment in 2012, when I held the first Botanica conference, which was at Trinity College in Dublin. This had been a dream of mine to bring together not just people in the aromatherapy community, but I wanted to link the herbalists as well. So I have a big vision. I want to bring everybody together. But I always thought it was a bit strange that, you have the herbalists and you have the aromatherapists, and like there's this gap between them. So my mad idea was initially to create a conference that gave both of those groups of people the opportunity to connect. And so that was the starting point for Botanica. But it was at that first event when I saw people coming from all these different countries, coming together in a warm exchange and a respectful exchange between one another, when I really saw how powerful that was, and how important community was, and how increasingly important it has been even since that time. With each Botanica conference edition we've built on, this has just become stronger and stronger and stronger. And the connections people make between one another, once you've stripped away what school you went to, what association you belong to, whether you have a doctor in front of your name, or whether you're a student of aromatherapy, whether you have 30 years of experience. Once you take all of that away, and all you have on the person's name badge is their name and perhaps the country they've come from, that changes everything, because they're sharing their passion for plants, which after all is what we're all in it for. At least that's for me. I'm talking for myself, is that, we're brought together by the passion for plants. And so once we let our egos and, leave them on the doormat, and we step into this space where we can celebrate that and where we can find those mutual connections, then it's magical. It's really magical. And so that's been another part of my heart path. Is I like connecting people. It's something I love, and it works. And I've seen beautiful things blossom from that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a connector also. That's how I was designed, which is another reason I do this podcast, because I want, the random person is going to find this podcast and go, oh, I've never heard of Rhiannon Lewis. She sounds amazing. That's been my desire from day one, is to increase the footprint of the people that I speak with. So
Wow.
I'm a connector as well. I love what you're doing, and diversity, it makes us stronger, not weaker. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that message about what you've just said about diversity making us stronger, I think it's something we should shout from the rooftops, and especially right now, not just on the aromatherapy level, but on the global level. Everybody has their place, especially when you're sharing something mutual that you love. That should be the only connector. And I've seen this with the International Clinical Aromatherapy Network that we launched this year. It's a sort of an extension of Botanica, in a sense, that I saw the need for people to have this non-biased, this safe professional space to come together, irrespective of who you adhere to as an organization or a school or a guru or a teacher or whatever. You can just come together into this one space. It's been really beautiful to see that. What we've managed to create, and there are three of us, okay, so it's not just about me. I have two great people who help me with this, is Lauren Gilbert and Magali Lerasle-Girard. These two amazing aromatherapists are assisting me. What we've seen as a result of ICAN starting, that sense of community is so important, and it's important for you no matter what part of your journey. Mm-hmm. So if you are just stepping out into the field of aromatherapy, if you've just enrolled for your first course, you are welcome on the platform. If you've been around for 30 odd years, like I have in the field of aromatherapy, you are welcome on the platform. And as long as you have a professional interest in using essentials, if essentials are part of your professional life, whether you're a distiller or whether you're a therapist or whether you're a researcher, it doesn't matter. You're welcome on the platform. And that already, in the space of 6 months, has generated so many really cool connections between people and friendships across the world, which would never have happened otherwise. So It's, once again, it's about community. Very important.
It is important for us moving forward. And I was just going to say, I'm a life coach also. So from a coaching perspective, having that community is essential for survival. If we want aromatherapy to continue moving forward, continue growing, we have to come together.
I think we do, Melissa. And I think we also need to be able to come together by leaving go of certain things. We have to let go of certain aspects. And, I know the ego is important, okay? And your sense of self and all of that, that's important. But when it gets in the way of connection, that's a shame. And so we ask that people, they step into a professional platform, so they have to exchange professionally. So yes, we can agree to disagree, we can debate, we don't have to all think the same way. Of course, that's what diversity is all about. But if we are going to engage on the platform, we do so in a professional way. So, we're respectful to one another. We don't trash people. There's no trolling. And that's just such a relief for people, because they know they literally are in a safe professional space. But sometimes that means letting go of certain things that you've been carrying around as part of your identity as a therapist, which aren't necessarily compatible with being in a professional safe space. It's been an interesting journey for us to see how the platform has evolved, because it was a big discovery at the time. We had no idea how people would whether it was even worth it, whether it was even worth putting together. But I'm happy to say it has been great.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that about ICAN. And it's for aromatherapists who use essential oils in a professional way.
Yes, it is a professional platform. So if you are a stay-at-home mom and you're using oils for your kids, that's not really the place. The platform isn't for you. There are plenty of forums and plenty of platforms elsewhere, on social media especially, where people get that support. But this is for people whose world is essential oils. If you're a practitioner, if you're a student, if you're a researcher, if you're a producer, if your focus professionally is essential oils, then you're welcome.
So we're talking about the future of aromatherapy, and I'm curious, in your professional opinion, where do you see aromatherapy heading? Like, if we were to look 5 to 10 years down the road, what do you see?
It's an interesting question. I think aromatherapy education has come a long way over the last, say, 15, 20 years. It's been, education has been improved. The question that I have the practitioners of aromatherapy improved in parallel? I know it's a little bit challenging to say that, but we have to be really, really careful. And this is why I'm thinking to the future. I'm trying to answer your question, but it just needs to be said that we need to be sure that if we are going to continue in the way that aromatherapy training is headed, and I'm part of that, and I take responsibility for that, which is that aromatherapy education has become more and more science-based. It's become more and more chemistry-based. It's become more and more research-based and more intellectual. And yes, that's been in parallel as well to the amount of research that's been conducted and is being conducted with essential oils. It's, there's been an explosion of research in the last 20 or so years. So of course, with more information, we're more informed, and therefore the training has taken in that direction. I just hope in doing so, the quality of the practitioner of aromatherapy also goes up. So what I'm trying to say is, does all that intellectual stuff translate to better care at the bedside? If it does, great. If it's just that it makes you a smarter person that can argue and debate in an intellectual way about essential oils, but it hasn't made a difference to your practice, then I wonder if that information is needed. Because for me, I'm talking about me as a practitioner, because that's if you strip away everything else as an educator or organizer of the conference, organizer of ICAN, essentially, I'm delivering care at the bedside. That's my heart path, is to make a difference. And how I try to make that difference is through education, and is through conferences, and it's through the platform, because my goal is that we all make a difference at the bedside, even more so than previously. But aromatherapy, we have to be careful for the future that we are not over-intellectualizing ourselves, but we have to make sure that the basic skills of a therapist are also given the same attention. So the counseling skills, the listening skills, patient interaction, being with the person, how to sit with somebody, how to be the therapist, that part, we have to be really, really careful to honor, as much as whether an essential oil has 3% or 15% of alpha bisabolol. Right. There's a risk at the moment of a slight disconnect. I'm sensing the disconnect. I see that aromatherapy, in our race to become more accepted, more integrated, more seen, more looked at differently, we're trying to please by saying we're smart, we know our stuff, we have our evidence base, we know our chemistry, the pharmacokinetics, the toxicology, and the LD50s and all of that data, and yet we're actually at the very source. We're aromatherapists. We're delivering care at the bedside.
Right.
So that bit mustn't be overlooked, because otherwise we're going to be out of balance. Aromatherapy is both an art and a science, as Robert Tisserand so many years ago said. We need both to be honored and given the same attention. And that's where I think the challenge for aromatherapy in the future, to go back to your question, I apologize, it's been a bit long-winded to get there, but it's that's the challenge, is that we honor the fact that aromatherapy is a therapy. And so all of that, the therapist skills, should be rising alongside the intellectual skills that we're teaching people.
We don't want to lose the focus of why we started in this in the first place. And that was to help ourselves, to help other people.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that, generally around the world, people love complexity. In aromatherapy, it's often the most simple interventions that are the most effective. So we can wrestle by doing, literature searches, systematic reviews. We can go down lots of rabbit holes trying to work out which is the best essential oil blend for the patient in front of us, when in fact all we may have needed to do is just give them one simple oil in one simple way, and it would have had the same effect. So I'm very conscious of that, because I am part of that story. When I educate people, I do come from an evidence base, I do come from a science base, I do come from chemistry. At the end of the day, what is important? And sometimes at the end of the day, what is important is, did you listen to what that patient just said to you? Did you hear their message? Did you hear their need? And sometimes it's not even which essential oil that is required, it's, did you hold their hand? Or did you spend time with them? Or did you ask them questions that would have led to an unfolding of other information that would be relevant?
That's beautiful. What are you working on right now that's got you really excited?
Well, Botanica is a conference that takes place every 2 years, and this is our 10th year. So we're doing a special edition for Botanica 2022, and it's funny because the dates are the 20th to the 22nd of May. So 20th of the 22nd, 2022. It's all a bit weird, but we were hoping that it would be an in-person event. With this whole scenario with COVID and with the difficulties of people being able to travel internationally, we've decided that this is once again, very sadly, a fully virtual event. So we're working full steam ahead with getting the conference ready to roll out in May. And it's amazing. We have a theme for this year. Each Botanica has a theme. But the theme for this year is the past, the present, and the future. So very appropriate for what we've just been talking about. So we're going to be looking back to the history of essential oils and aromatics and aromatherapy, as well as herbs, with some amazing speakers with regards to those topics, really people you won't want to miss. Then talking about what's going on currently in our fields, and then what are the cutting edge, what are the innovative things that are happening out there that are taking aromatherapy into the future. So that's really where we're at. And because it's a 10th edition, we're working with the great professional conference organizers. If anybody had come to the Botanica 2020 conference, they'll realize this is an immersive event. It's not just like a Zoom webinar. It's a big, fully streamed professional event that you think you've just stepped into this amazing aromatic bubble. And we have lots of extra things for people to do to get them to engage, or to encourage them to engage with one another, but also with our trade stands, because there is a trade show as well. It's going to be awesome and lots of fun. So 3 full days, a very intense conference, completely immersive, and it's great. So Botanica 2022.
That was everybody's invitation. Step into the aromatic bubble.
Last chance to sign up. Everybody's
Excellent.
welcome. But it's very cool. The great thing about doing it virtually, actually, I have to say, is that the program can be even bigger and even richer than if we were in person. And this was something I struggled with because I wanted it to be in person. But in order to do that, the conference would have been really small because of the financial investment of making a hybrid event. And hats off to the AIA when they held their hybrid conference, because I know that it's to run a hybrid event is extremely challenging in finances and also logistics. And we just would have had to have shrunken Botanica down into this tiny little nutshell, when in fact, by making that decision to go 100% virtual once again, it's actually meant that we can add more to the event. And that's what it's going to be. It's going to be awesome.
Well, I want to thank you for saying that, because I feel like, especially in this time that we're in right now, that people think virtual means less. I'm not going to get as much if I attend virtually, but like you just said, you're able to do even more.
Oh yeah,
because it's all virtual. So thank you for sharing that, because that might be the thing that prompts someone to say, oh, well, then maybe I will go, because it's going to be more than if I'd gone in person.
Right. Yes. And I mean, it does mean also that people don't have to pay their airfare and have, their accommodation and, get themselves from A to B, etc. And so there is a certain convenience to it. But with Botanica, it was really important because we've always been a really international event. What it meant then for us, looking at the logistics, was that could people from 57 countries still come? Can people from Brazil, will they be able to, with the economy that's really gone through the floor because of COVID, but also the fact that international travel isn't possible. What about the Australians? What about the New Zealanders? They won't be able to physically, or they probably won't be able to physically join us. What a pity. So it's a means of bringing people together, but it's actually more, you get more out of it because everything is recorded and you get the replays as well. And you still get to connect live with one another because we built in this amazing live feature. So you can chat in real time or in video time during the event with your colleagues and be together. You can create groups and be together around a table, even though it's not physically possible, but you can still do that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, everybody, step in. Come into the aromatic bubble with Rhiannon. Yes.
Yeah, you'll have fun.
So I can't tell you the number of times, especially in my aromatic chats, where your name has come up as someone who has inspired my guest. But I'm curious, who inspires you?
Good question. It's my patients and the students. They are my constant source of inspiration. I work particularly in my particular area of passion where I've been able to make the most difference at the bedside has been in cancer and palliative care. I've been teaching in that environment pretty intensively over the last, since about 2014, I think it was. That particular area of expertise for practitioners is an area where you can really make an enormous difference. But I'm an educator in that environment. Yes, I do work with people with cancer or who in the palliative stages here in France, but it's limited what I do. But where I have the impact is through students, through practitioners who are already working in those environments. And when I teach them and I see then through feedback and we meet each year and we share what we've been able to implement since the classes and what changes in their practice have been made, that's where my inspiration comes from. But it's also inspiring from patients. Those are who also keep me doing what I do. So my students definitely, because I see the impact of what I've been teaching being transformed into practice, but it's also the patients, because you need incredible amounts of resilience to cope with life-limiting illness and everything that throws at you, through treatment, through the disease itself, through how your whole life changes, through the impact socially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And I'm always in awe. Those are my sources of inspiration, is when I see the difference being made, but also whenever I'm in a therapeutic encounter with a patient, I'm always in awe, because that person is sharing with you something intimate about their life, their perspective, their experience, and you are just a vector, if you like, between the plant and the patient. You're the go-between. The plant has the properties and the patient has the need, and you are the go-between. That's all you are. And that's why I think, keeping humble is important, because that's all you are. The plant needs to communicate with the patient needs the plant, and there you are in that middle. And that is a source of inspiration for me too. When you put the two together, when you manage to connect them in the right way that's appropriate and that works, that's where the magic happens. Of course, there are people in my life professionally who inspire me and who keep me going. I particularly appreciate the work of Annie Harmon and her work with hydrolats, and the incredible contribution that she makes with our understanding of the amazing gentle distilled waters. Madeleine Kirchhoff, of course, as well, is a massive inspiration to me in her work with elderly care and end-of-life care. Jonathan Benavides from the Netherlands as well, his work with autism and the more subtle ways of working with oils. Felicity Warner as well, the soul midwife, making huge differences at the very end of life with patients in very subtle ways. I could go on. There's just, so many people that are a part of my support network as well, who encourage me to do what I do. But at the very essence of it, it's the patients and the students.
I want to know how people can get in touch with you. As always, I will include the links in the show notes, but I think it's important for people to hear directly from you. How do they get in touch with you?
Good question. I have so many projects and so many things that I get up to. The best place is probably to go to my website, which is essentialorc.com, which is the sort of main space of like who I am, what I do, that sort of thing. I should be updating it more regularly than I do, but that's a way of connecting with me. You can also, of course, connect with me through the ICAN platform. It's a simple application process. You just have to answer a couple of questions to show that you are professionally involved in essential oils, and then you're let into the platform. It's a basic free user access. People can connect with me through that as well. That's the clinical aromatherapy network.com. And come to Botanica or connect with Botanica through the website, which is botanica2022.com. Any of those emails that come through any of those fields I've just mentioned come to me, because I'm not a big organization, it's me. So I'm not always responsive, like in the next few minutes after you've sent an email. There is just me, and I'm trying to manage several things at once. So if you don't get a reply from me within a week, then prompt me. But yeah, just find me.
Wonderful. And then for our last few moments together, I just always like to hand over the floor to my guest, whatever words you want to leave us with.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. Something my father said to me when I was a kid: you need to lead by example. And it was something that at the time wasn't necessarily always said in a positive way. There was me being this rough and ruly kid climbing trees and running around the bush and disappearing for hours on end, and he was telling me to be responsible and lead by example. But those words did stick with me, and I think there's a quote that's also guided me, and I know it's been possibly wrongly attributed. It was originally said that it was Mahatma Gandhi that actually said it, but in fact it was probably not quite what he said. But it's about be the change you want to see in the world. And it's a bit the same way, you lead by example, or if you want to see change, then you need to be the change and take that step and take action, and the universe unfolds as a result of that. And I do think that we need to be responsible, and I think we need to, if we want to see change, then we should be part of that. But we can do so in a gentle way. It doesn't have to be brutal. It doesn't have to be, aggressive. But just small steps in that positive direction have always been what have influenced me anyway in my life.
Thank you so much, Rhiannon.
What a pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you. I feel like I've been just chatting to an old friend and probably rabbiting on a bit too much, but
no, I'm loving it. I'm loving every minute of it, and I'm sure that the listeners are going to love it as well. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Early in our chat, as Rhiannon was talking about how her aromatic journey got started, she brought up the idea of gut wisdom. She was fortunate to be so young and know her path. I believe in our society, we have forgotten how to listen to our intuition. We've set aside our gut wisdom, and instead we outsource it to others. We ask our friends, our family members, our mentors for their input, for their insight, instead of trusting our own gut wisdom. You've heard the phrase, trust your gut? This is what I'm talking about. That ability to know in your knower that the choice you're making is right. This ability to trust our own gut wisdom is one of the things that I work on with my life coaching clients. I have walked beside many people, helping them turn on their gut wisdom and get in touch with their intuition again after shutting it down and neglecting it for years. Some clients, even for the first time. This is your invitation. Reach out. If you're one of the many people out there who feel disconnected with who they are, you'll want to reach out to me at Lemon Balm Coaching. Thank you so much for joining me today as I chatted with Rhiannon Lewis. I enjoyed her keynote speech at the Alliance of International Aromatherapists conference last year and was so excited to learn more about her aromatic journey today. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching, holistic life coaching for the business of your life. You can find and connect with me, your holistic life coach and registered aromatherapist, on the web at lemonbalmcoaching.com. I will see you next time with our next episode. Until then, peace, love, and aromatics.